Welcome back! In this lesson, we're going to talk about how to deal with unavoidable close-up triggers. Here's our agenda. First, we'll talk about how to deal with triggers that you can't avoid, but that you know about ahead of time. Next, we'll talk about responding to surprise appearances of triggers. And finally, we'll talk briefly about what to do if you're being charged by a loose dog. When dealing with unavoidable triggers that are too close for your dog to train around, I suggest prioritizing getting away or past the trigger safely without your dog reacting. That means sometimes putting some considerations, like the timing of your treats or cues, aside for these emergency situations. When your dog is more advanced in their training, these same scenarios that are problems now may become training setups for you, but until then, manage as best you can with some of the strategies you'll learn here. So when would you know about a trigger ahead of time but not be able to avoid it? These are common in apartment living situations where there are barking dogs behind apartment doors, people in shared hallways and stairwells. You may also have to pass by or be near a trigger like a barking dog, a bus stop, etc. to get into your house. In any case, there will be times where you have to figure out a way to negotiate a difficult situation for your dog and have the luxury of planning ahead. There are 3 things we'll focus on when dealing with unavoidable triggers that you know about ahead of time. One is engaging your dog early with food or toys. Sometimes you might need to start getting them engaged with whatever you have before your dog perceives the trigger. Second is making it a game for your dog, usually a game involving running or otherwise hurrying past the trigger. And finally, generally you'll keep your leash short just in case your dog lunges. The top priority is preventing your dog from contacting a trigger. Let's take a look at some video examples. Here, Melissa and Zuma are passing by a neighbor's house where the dogs always bark at them. Now, in reality, this is an avoidable trigger since she could just cross the street, but Zuma is taking one for the team for demonstration purposes. In this first clip, Melissa is just going to use hurry, which Zuma has fun with, to get past the barking dogs. She shortens the leash and picks up the pace. Now, warning that there is some barking in this video clip, so if your dog is nearby, you might want to turn down the volume. In this next clip, Melissa is showing how to start engaging your dog with food before she's right in front of the triggers. So she'll start feeding before she's in front of the house. And then she'll keep Zuma engaged by continuously feeding while they hurry past. Next, another option, if you don't need a short leash or 2 hands on the leash, is treat bowling. Because these dogs are inside the house, there's no risk of Zuma coming into contact with them. So chasing treats down the sidewalk past the barking dogs is a good option for her. Next, just a couple of clips for those of you living in apartments. Rachel will demonstrate a couple of these techniques in an apartment complex setting where she'll use hurry and then some food luring to get past apartment doors where barking dogs live. And here she's engaging Billy with the treats before they are in front of the apartment door where the dogs usually bark. So those are some ways to get past triggers that you know are going to be there. But what about surprise triggers? These could be anything that appears unexpectedly. A cat, dog, or person coming around a corner, getting out of a car, peeking out over a fence or through a window. Hopefully you'll be able to avoid surprises around blind corners using the techniques we discussed in Lesson 1, but sometimes you're just going to be surprised despite your best efforts. So what to do? The first thing to do when a trigger surprises you in close quarters is to shorten your leash as you move away, like you've been practicing. If you're lucky enough to be far enough away from the surprise trigger that your dog doesn't start reacting, that's great. You might not have to pull the leash at all and just use your regular hurry behavior. However, assuming the surprise is too close, don't worry too much about keeping the leash loose. You just need to get away safely and quickly. Move away as far as you can. Sometimes you'll have a lot of space and sometimes you won't, and we'll look at examples in a second of what to do in either case. Finally, if you happen to have something that can be used as a physical barrier nearby, like a parked car, for instance, get that between your dog and the trigger. Using your body to block your dog's view of the trigger is also an option, although if your dog reacts and you're in the way, there is a risk you'll be bitten. If your dog has a history of these so-called redirected bites, putting your body in the way isn't a good strategy for you unless your dog is muzzled. And I do strongly recommend muzzling dogs on walks if they have a history of redirected bites. Let's take a look at some video of surprise triggers. Here a person comes around the corner suddenly and Rachel does a quick hurry away from the person. This first one is a U-turn, 180 degrees, and this time she moves sort of diagonally quickly across the street. Remember that your hurry maneuver can be in any direction. These next few examples show some strategies for when you don't have a lot of space. Again, you'll be trying very hard to not put yourself and your dog into this situation in the first place, but if it does happen, here are some options. In this clip, Melissa and Zuma are walking on the sidewalk, fenced in by parked cars and some shrubs. She sees a trigger coming at her fast, she shortens the leash and puts her body between Zuma and the child running by. Here's another example in a different context. Someone pops out from behind that car, Rachel quickly shortens the leash, moves off the sidewalk, and gives Coco a find it to work on. And here's another option for a surprise trigger when you don't have a lot of time to react. A dog comes around the corner and Melissa quickly shortens the leash and moves off the sidewalk to hide between some parked cars. And here's the view from the other side of the car so you can see what's going on. She gets Zuma behind the car and then drops some treats to keep her busy until the trigger is passed. Finally, let's talk about loose dogs. If you have a dog who reacts to other dogs or is fearful of dogs, the last thing you want to see is a dog charging you. You don't always have much time to take action when you see a loose dog coming. If you're walking with another adult, whoever isn't holding your dog's leash can sometimes run interference and try to get the loose dog's attention, and their owner's attention, by tossing treats or just moving toward them. Many loose dogs will pause or retreat if they see a stranger coming toward them, but do be aware that approaching a loose dog also puts you at risk of a bite. So use this strategy judiciously and only in emergencies when you feel like there's no other option. Assuming you're alone, shorten your dog's leash so that you have better control. Get your deterrent out of your pocket or your treat bag, whether that be citronella spray, your pop-up umbrella, or something else, and yell for the owner. Often in practice, you're doing all of this at the same time. Here, Rachel shows the citronella in action. She has Coco's leashes short and held back, and then she sprays out in front of her. Same thing here with the umbrella. Melissa shortens the leash and then pops the umbrella out toward the imaginary dog. Now, if you happen to have enough time and the option to put a physical barrier between your dog and the loose dog, take it. Your car, a fenced-in tennis court, or even something you can climb up onto, like maybe playground equipment, could provide some safety. Now, this is all assuming a dog is charging and is close to you. If the dog is a good distance away, usually just moving away, for instance, turning up another street, is enough. A few words for those of you with small dogs. Small dogs are at much greater risk of serious injury during a loose dog attack. Many owners pick up their small dogs when they see another dog coming. This isn't always a bad strategy, but I do want you to be aware that some dogs will jump up to try to get your dog from your arms and can bite and seriously injure you in the process. A potentially safer strategy could be to put your small dog up on or in something like a parked car, a garbage can, or dumpster. But if you think you might employ any of those strategies, I'd recommend practicing beforehand. Most dogs won't naturally take to being picked up and placed on top of a trash can. Now, coyote vests are spiked vests that are marketed to protect small dogs from coyote predation. There isn't really good information on their effectiveness as of yet, but I wanted to mention them just in case they do help your dog. This is a photo here of my friend's dog, Mama, who is a tiny little trail dog and hikes in areas that are heavily populated by coyotes. Luckily, her vest hasn't been put to the test yet. Okay, let's wrap up. You've learned some techniques for getting past close-up triggers, both unexpected and expected. And we've talked about the importance of being as safe as you can and being prepared for loose dogs. Time to take some action. Decide which methods for dealing with close-up triggers we covered here that you might use, given your physical abilities and the areas you usually walk in. Then fill out the assessment, letting us know what worked best for you. Congrats! This was the last regular lesson of the core 4 modules of the Reactive Dog Survival Guide. You'll finish out this module with some 2-minute trainings.